What's up?
How's it going?
Good.
Good.
Holy shit.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you know much about like music theory, or I've always heard there are things that like go into writing a song or making a song. Do you know much about that? Or you at least know there's a pattern, I guess?
I'm familiar. Like everything sort of has a structure when built well that it's appealing.
Yeah.
And things that you don't do it well,
I've
it's
heard
not
songs
appealing.
have like a there's a structure that most songs have.
Yeah, movies,
Yeah. So I'm wondering, I keep being made to feel old when I turn on the radio because I have started doing the whole music today sucks. What is this crap? Back in my day, it was so good, and now I got to listen to this noise. And I've said, oh my gosh, I sound like every other person once they get to a certain age. You know you're old when you complain about the music. But I swear to you, there is something about the noise being created nowadays where when I listen to it, I'm like, this can't follow what other songs are following. There's no way this is the music theory or this is the something. There's got to be something there making it terrible. Have you listened to much music lately? Like,
so every one of the generations of music consumers, they get something different out of music. And so the stuff that is not appealing to you is absolutely appealing to the people who are consuming it now.
Oh, obviously.
Like look at if you even go back to early like 40s, 50s music, it's a different beast than it is today. But the consumers of it were enthralled by it. Maybe the motivations of music, like some people listen to music to get pumped up and get their motivations going just through raising their blood pressure and increasing their heart rate and, mental stimulation. Maybe the lyrics or the tempo draw you into it and make you feel a certain way, and being exposed to the emotion that music can give you, maybe that's your flavor. But I think if the group in the generation is different than the generations before, then they're going to have a different taste in what that music is. And the artists are just going to give the product for the people who want it.
Yeah. I mean, it's less now of a melody, I feel like you could take most songs, and even if you have never heard them, you can listen to a couple seconds and then you can sort of hum along, you know where it's going. Whereas the crap nowadays will just be like da 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 da. Like there's no, it's talking, it's I don't know what the melody or the beat is. It's literally just like, and it's so awful. I can't even get through it. I'm like, ugh.
Well, look at how the technology has changed too. So if in the 80s that you wanted to start a band and you had a garage and everybody learned how to play an instrument, you got together and you learned, you might not even know how to traditionally read music, right? You got together and you all agreed what sounded really well, sounded good pleasing to the ears. And now with technology, you don't have to have a band, because on a computer screen, you can create a beat and you can create instruments, right? You might not even know how to play it. You can even take samples that other people have created, assemble it into something, and do what you do, which is sing. And on the viewer's side, the music might not be great because it wasn't able to sort of like take form over time where people in a garage just decided what sounds well. This was a button on a screen is like, what will they tolerate to hear my lyrics coming out of my face hole?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I even sort of funny. I'm going back to this, but, you look at things like Psalms in the Bible. Those are meant to be like songs, right? Like sung. And I'll read that having never actually heard the song. And I'll say, how's that? That doesn't even rhyme. Like we're used to songs rhyming and having a flow, but you read those and it's just sort of sentences. So then I try to think, wow, what must that have sounded like? How would that have flowed? It's weird. But
yeah. And I'll make a prediction, and it's sort of just what human beings do. And as something evolves to a certain way, we go to its extremes and then we snap back. Right. And so like we'll make cell phones and they're big, so we try to make them small. And then we'll get to really small and we're like, let's go big again. And then we'll make these big tablets and people are walking out. But then it'll go small again. So we'll go back and forth to the extreme. So if you listen to like, early music and time the tempo, and then you go to today's music and time the tempo, we're just ratcheting up the pace. We're
Mhm.
upping the beats per minute. You know what I mean? And how
Yeah.
quickly we do something, how loud we sing, how high pitched we sing, how vulgar we can get. Like we go to this massive extreme, and then you get outside of what's tolerated by the consumer, and then it kind of snaps back to the other side. So I just think we're at a high point on the extreme, and it will start to kind of cave back in a little
Yeah,
bit.
I mean, I feel like a perfect example of sort of evolving is Madonna. If you listen to Madonna's early stuff and then maybe early 2000s, her voice is totally different. It's like a total different register.
Mhm.
The music is totally different. The subject matter is maybe different. And it's just like, oh, wow. Like that's somebody to me, I think, that changed with what was popular at the time. And it's apparent.
And it's cool that you bring this up, because that's a philosophy that I kind of watch happen. There's a theme that happens all on a regular basis, where you think that giving more people access to things will make things better. Like, so if all of the information, that all the knowledge is hidden in the church, and there's monks that are protecting the scrolls, and they only let certain people in, and then those people get to be learned if the monks can decide that they are worthy of the knowledge. And you're like, oh, that's shit. Like, let everybody through here. Right.
Yeah.
And then so you give information to everyone regardless. And like, what's all these stupid people getting all this knowledge and then sharing stupid opinions about that knowledge? Right. And so it goes to the other side where like, well, no, we got to be a little bit more, we got to filter some certain people out. Not everybody needs to have access to that knowledge. So even literature, there's only certain people that were allowed to write books. I wrote a bunch of books when I was younger, and I sent them to a publisher, and they denied me for publication. So I have books that never got printed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a filter that kept certain people and their ability to write books out of the system. Now I can go to Amazon, type up a book, hit self-publish, and now a book is out there with my inability to write literature, right? So a guy that maybe doesn't have great vocabulary, or doesn't have great grammar, or can't spell, or punctuation is terrible. Now it's out there. And then there's somebody out there to read that book and say, how the shit did this ever get through? Right.
But you're an author.
But you would be an author, right?
Yeah.
And so, but that's the evolution. A lot of people who aren't smart enough to have an opinion can share their opinion. People who shouldn't be making music can now make music. People who shouldn't be making movies can make movies. And so, our logic tells us that would be a good thing up to a certain point, and then it has to go in the other direction.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much controversy, I feel like, still over Beyonce turning country, and people get up in arms. Have you heard about any of Beyonce's country stuff? And then she played at the halftime show on, what was it? Was that Christmas Day or Thanksgiving? That's Christmas Day, I think. I didn't mind the performance. I thought it was a good show. Do I feel like it's country? No. To me, country has a certain sound. You can't just get on a horse and put a cowboy hat on and say I made a country song, but apparently you can. But that's just this whole, like, I mean, who's to say what country is and isn't? If everyone's like, well, that's not country, she's not country. Okay, well, what's country? Country's this. Well, who says? It's almost like there's so much interpretation too, but maybe I'm old. I'm getting old, I guess. Like, is it my age and my inability to tolerate certain things, or is it just
all right? So I'll change the product, and I think it's a brilliant move by Beyonce, by the way.
Yeah.
And Taylor Swift did the same thing. She capped off at what what the country audience could support. She wanted to grow her business model, so she went into pop, where she took some of the people from country, and we went into a much larger deal. And and
they're so close. Pop and country. I mean, Jelly Roll. People are saying Jelly Roll is a country artist. I never saw Jelly Roll as a country. I still don't think he sounds country, but
right.
They're so close.
So that's why I say it was brilliant, because they're so closely related that let's just say you take a product, you take one of your $5,000 Stanley mugs, and you're selling them in Youngstown, right? And you're like, these are the Youngstown Stanley mugs, and everybody around you like, yeah, Youngstown, we're going to support you.
Yeah.
And then you cap off and you're like, well, I got this market, but there's a lot of other people out there that I can do. So you're going to then go to a bigger city and you're going to do the Youngstown mug. Now, you're going to lose some Youngstown subscribers now that you've sold out, and it's not just about how much you drilled in. You're just capitalizing on a market that's bigger than it.
Mhm.
And then that city will treat you just like Youngstown did. But your Youngstown people, you're going to lose a couple of them. They're going to be a little pissed that you bailed on them when
I
you
feel like
jumped
this
into that
happened
market.
with like LeBron James or something, or maybe it's not LeBron. Maybe I'm thinking of when I was down south, Cam Newton. I don't know. I feel like this happens to athletes.
It happens everywhere. This happens everywhere.
You left us. You went bigger. How dare you broaden your horizons?
Yeah. Happens all the time. And that is the evolution of, the business side of music and the business side of literature. You cap off at an audience at a certain level. And in order to get involved in a different audience, sometimes you're looking at your product and saying, I'm about to risk the entire product going from country to pop.
Mm-hmm.
These people are going to be pissed, or they're going to be less likely to buy the product for the prospect of this bigger market being bigger than what I'm leaving. And that's like I said, it's a brilliant decision, because I think the risk is very low and limited, because I think Beyonce fans are going to might say shit, but they're going to still listen to her pop music or whatever she's considered.
I think if they were a big fan, they still are. And if they weren't, they're really not now.
Yeah. And then
they just have
but she's going to pick up a whole new audience that weren't a listener of hers at all if they didn't come on the radio and they didn't get exposure to it. So that's why I say low risk, high reward type of moves like that. Even if you erode some of your weaker fan base, whatever, it's part of business.
And it's not that I'm getting older. It's just I like a certain sound, and the sound has changed.
Yeah. Everybody gets pissed when the thing they're comfortable with starts to leave them. So let's just say you got involved in a political party. We'll call it the Republicans or the Democrats. And you were like, I believe in this thing. And then you look in 5 years and that party has moved completely away from where they are when you joined them. And now they're on this whole erratic fringe thing. And you're like, I don't even freaking recognize that. I'm just going to start my own party and be right where I was in the beginning when we used to call it a Democrat party.
Yeah.
It happens everywhere.
That exactly has happened to me. Is I associated with one party, one thing for so long that veering from it felt wrong, until it got so bad that it felt like staying was wrong, and it was just like, what do? You have to change. I mean, didn't the Democratic Party used to sort of be like the Republican Party at one point?
There's some things there's some things that have reversed a little bit over time, and if you snapshotted any 2 years separated by 10 or more years, they're different enough that there might be some people that are like, I'm not here anymore. I'm closer to this one over here. So and that's what I'm saying. Like, music can't stay the same. Politics can't stay the same. Economies and finance can't stay the same. Everything evolves in that direction.
The only thing constant is change.
That's it. Yeah. All right. So got your topic out of the way. Now, do you want a political topic from me? Do you want, what kind of topic do you want from me? I've kind of stayed away from politics, but we're about to hit Monday, which is going to be very politically charged.
Yes. And speaking of music, I was just saying the other day, Carrie Underwood is going to perform at Trump's inauguration. Mm-hmm. So now all I'm waiting to see is all the hate Carrie Underwood gets.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll happen, but anybody. And it's not just Carrie and Trump. It's any performer at an inauguration of somebody that other people don't agree with.
Yeah, and think about the pressures. Is once then you jump into that marketplace, it's just like Beyonce going over into country music. Once you go to the Republican side, you lose so much support on the other one. It's not like you can toe in the water and feel it out.
Yeah.
Now you have to be a Republican, because now all the new people that support you are there. So you almost have to change your views to stay with the risk that you took. And now you're all bought in. It's like, I'm a Browns fan and I buy all the Browns jerseys. And if the team sucks and I don't like them anymore, I've got to say, I'm so invested in this new thing here. I almost have to stay here, even if I don't want to be here anymore, because look at all of the loss that I would have if I were to lose or leave.
Yeah. Speaking of that, which I guess we are going to go politics.
Let's do it.
Because I wanted to ask you about this too. Mark Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan. So long interview. I haven't watched the whole thing yet, but it was interesting when I started to watch it. One of the comments on the videos, somebody said, "This is what I changed my mind. I want to be on the winning side looks like."
Yeah, 100%.
And I said, yeah, I mean, to me, it feels very much so far like him coming out and being like, same thing. Look, I was supportive of one thing for so long until it got so crazy that I'm like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I want to show everyone how little I had to do with this and what I was facing.
So is there evil in that? Isn't that the interest of the person? Isn't everybody exercise whatever's in their best interest is what the thing that they'll support now, even if it was different before? That's just human nature.
Yeah.
There's no evil. And I mean, all we know now is that Zuckerberg will become the chameleon, whatever's in his best interest. That's the only new thing that we learned about him, but it's not really new. I think everybody would do that. If you had to conform to a certain set of beliefs to keep yourself in the, the right by whoever's supporting you, I think you'll do that. I mean, and that's what I hate about politics is we take human nature, right? And we sort of say we can have a group of people that we all have done the same thing, but we can take somebody that we're questioning and hold them to a higher standard than we will. So
yeah,
if I've done a wrong thing, I can somehow lecture you on the wrong thing that you're doing. And somehow that's worse.
Yeah. And that to me is our elections are 100% that. I don't remember the last time we had an election where it was like, oh my gosh, these guys both have great ideas. Let's see who has the better idea. No, it's just who's the lesser of two evils, who is the one you can tolerate more. It's just like, look what they did, but look what they did, but look what he does, but look what he does. Why don't you all just tell me something good you can do? But no, it's fear and doubt and make you like someone less than someone else. And that's how you win.
It. But that is anything that enters the political realm becomes stupid in that exact same way. Mm-hmm. Okay. You can have someone say, I don't want this to be a partisan issue, and then have all of their attacks be completely partisanship. And nobody sits back and say, didn't you just say that you wanted this to be a nonpartisan thing? Mm-hmm. And you were the first person that jumped on and made it something partisan. It gets stupid to a terrible level. And
accusing someone of lying if they get more information and change their stance. So if it's like, not that lying doesn't not happen. I'm sure it does. But if somebody says, hey, I'd like to do this, and you're running on that campaign, and I am for this, and then you get a little further along and more information presents itself and more experts come in and you really start deep diving and seeing, and you're like, oh God, yeah, I get it. That wouldn't work. All right. I'm not for that anymore. You liar. You've lied to us. You've been a liar the whole time. And it's like, wait a minute. Why can't it just be, I got a little further, more information presented itself, and now we have to pivot?
Do you know why that doesn't work?
Why?
Because it's abused. Okay. So things like, okay, let's define what is lying.
To me, lying is you said something knowing it's not true.
So I have a blue cube in my hand, and I say, oh, this blue cube, Kelin's not going to be happy about this blue cube. So I say, I've got a red cube in my hand. I said something that I know to be not true, right?
Yeah.
So that is
in a
lying.
Malicious way.
You knew it. Now, if somebody were like, oh, that's really not blue, that's whatever those fictitious Crayola colors are.
I don't know.
And so if you asked
Robin's egg,
if I said it's not blue, and what I really meant was that if I said it's red, then that's a lie. I told you something I knew not to be true. But if I said something that ended up being wrong, is that a lie? It is not a lie. That's misspeaking or not having enough information. And now saying, oh, by the way, that cube that I had before, it wasn't blue. It was really whatever, that Crayola color.
Yeah.
That's not lying, but we've taken those two things and we've slapped those two things together. And I say it's abused because politicians are looking to take their opposition and frame them in whatever term makes them look worse. Okay. So they will abuse the term lie to score a point, when if you reversed it and engineered it right down and said, here's definition of a lie. Was that it? No, then it's not a lie. You can't use that term. If we were more specific and held people accountable for misusing words, if I call you a racist, right, that carries some weight. So if I can find something that's fringe, whatever, and be able to say it's racist, then everybody who thinks that racism should carry weight should say, dude, you just abused a term that everybody should be outraged on, and you used it in a way that wasn't racist. You just fucked that term from ever being useful.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why I can't stand getting any information from these big news organizations, because I've started watching things like podcasts and videos and interviews where you see an unedited video of what somebody actually said and the context in which they said it. And then you see what was reported about what they said. And it's like, you are so far off that it's obvious that was done on purpose.
Yes.
That was pushing an agenda. And now I don't trust you.
Yeah.
Why would I trust your organization now? Because it happens often. Like, it's all the time.
Yeah.
And I've started saying, if I saw a headline in an online newspaper or on TV or something, and it sounded so outlandish that anybody in their right mind would be up in arms about, look, this thing they said or did, immediately I go and I try to find the actual clip of the person actually saying it and what was said before and after. And then I say, okay, that's not what they meant. Or it is, and it is crazy, but you don't know if you just simply trust that one source. And that's ridiculous that we have so few now that we can just fully trust and we know they're not pushing an agenda.
All right, so let's take one like the nomination for Department of Defense. Okay, he believes that women should not be in infantry. Okay, so on a podcast, he went through all the reasons why women, by and large, shouldn't be in the military as infantry.
Like front lines, basically. Yeah.
Right. And the conversation, if allowed to explain the depth of that kind of a conversation, would be in order to include most women, you'd have to lower standards so that they could pass the tests that you put in front of them. And then no fellow infantryman wants to have the person next to them that has their back to have lower standards. That makes everybody kind of weaker, right?
Yeah.
But
it's dangerous.
That headline that you would have looked up, he said the words, women should not be in infantry. In his beliefs. That would not be a lie if somebody said, you don't think women should be in infantry. And he countered that with, what I meant, right, was I'm not in favor of the standards being lower. If there is a woman that doesn't have to make the standards be lowered and she can do everything a guy could do, and it doesn't make the infantry worse, right?
Yeah.
Then totally qualified.
Yeah.
And that, and that's why, like I said, politics makes all this kind of stupid, because if you didn't know whether or not it was a man or a woman, and you were just looking on the measurements of what they could do, and you approved it based on what was on the paper, not knowing what gender or not knowing what you were, you would approve that, right, on its merits. And that's where I think we're headed. But I think there's a lot of people that are going to be upset about that, because what if you don't measure up? Are there a lot of people in positions right now that wouldn't have gotten there? So let's just take, you take somebody that's of minority status and you want them to go to college, and you take someone who's been studying their whole life and is an Asian descent, and they deserve to be in college. Now you have a choice. You've only got so many seats in college. Do you take the merits and put the person that belongs there? And you're like, oh, there isn't a lot of these minorities in that position, and I'd really like the minorities to have those positions. It only seems fair. More educated minorities mean that they can do more things with that education in the future. So it feels good to do that until I tell you that this person over here who has superior measurements is going to be deprived of it. Isn't that a victim of what feels good over here and put somebody in a position that doesn't deserve to be there?
Yeah. Like, do you squander amazing potential in hopes that the other will develop potential when they may or may not?
If you're allowed to talk about it, in everything that you do over here that has good intentions has an extreme cost on, on the other side. So you put women in infantry. You take a pros and cons list. You take a person that can do it. They can carry the same weight. They can run the same speed. They can shoot with the same accuracy. Right.
Yeah.
And then now they're a distraction for infantrymen who now are attracted to the opposite sex, and where that wouldn't have been a problem if it were all men.
Yeah.
But it is now a problem. And you're allowed to put that on the cons list and figure out a way. Maybe you have an infantry comprised completely of just women to keep that in. So you're able to solve the problems without just like, that's the blockade now. Are you either you're sexist, where you think women and men shouldn't be together in the infantry, or you think that, broad brush, that they just can't do the job, so keep them completely out. And that's how the debate went down. It was one of those two extremes. Where do I think this dude is, anti-woman and whatever? No, I think he's a soldier, and I think he's come to some conclusions. And I think that if he gets advocacy in both departments, they'll come with some kind of reasonable deal. I don't think he's going to be like, I hate women so much, I want to get them out of everything. I want them back in the kitchen, and I want them just having babies. And
which is why I say, when you see a headline or you hear somebody said something and your immediate reaction is to, what? That is so offensive. Then look into it first.
But if you were to look into it and hear and look at the transcripts from the podcast, because it was a 1 hour discussion about it, would you have gotten details to find out that this dude really meant one thing when that's not what he said whatsoever? I would be able to write, if I was a Democrat and I wanted to take aim at Republicans, and I could take exactly what he said without any context, taking it out of context, I could write that headline that he wants women out of the military and be 100% accurate. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those hearings, confirmation hearings, followed that vein, and it was accurate. There was no lies told during that deal, but you wouldn't have gotten, and I believe that you wouldn't have gotten the whole truth. But what if he did feel that way? What if at the time when he was there a couple years ago, he did feel like, we should just get women out of the military, and now out of the prospect, just like Zuckerberg and the Trump administration, now since he's been commissioned to be, or he's been nominated to be the leader of the Department of Defense, all of a sudden he's like, those feelings aren't going to jive with this opportunity to be it. I'm allowed to change my mind now. Like, okay, well, before I felt like no women should be, well, let's let the meritocracy of women win in this. Maybe we will include them. Is he allowed to then change his mind from 3 years ago to now?
Is he allowed?
Yeah.
Sure.
Does he get a pass from somewhat his critics to say, he just changed his mind? He got new information, new opportunity.
Yeah, he probably won't get a pass. They're going to come at that and be like, "Oh, you're backtracking, so because it's benefiting you." And
just like Zuckerberg.
Do you think Zuckerberg? And again, I haven't watched the whole thing yet. Do you think he's backtracking to sort of that now fit in with this new box he's got to fit into, or do you think this is him coming out and say, "I've always felt this way, but I was pushed from the powers that were in office currently to look a certain way. I had no choice. Now I'm free, and I can tell you what he
said and is going to say."
Yeah.
But in reality, he was open to the prospect, because it was such gray areas, right?
Yeah.
Because you get to a line that, like, do we want disinformation? Do we want untrue things? Do we want our enemies to be able to mess with, the civilian population and how they feel about stuff? And you can answer those like, the best that we can get truthful stuff out there, the better. And then the solution, that gray area part, is, well, what do we do about it? Like, what's our response to it? And if we do the wrong thing, then we're going to permit it. And if we do the wrong thing, then we're going to eliminate it. All right. So they picked the right wrong thing and the wrong right thing.
Yeah.
They picked it first, and they played around with and he was open to it. And that's really the only judgment you can make about it, where, he probably supported somebody who wasn't him, because then they could take the ultimate blame for it and say, no, look, the feds told us to do it, and all we had to do was listen. Now, if you were like, my principles say that we need open information, and you're telling me not to do information, he could have pushed up against it and took a ton of criticism. He went the easy way, and he's taking the easy way. So what you've learned about Zuckerberg, if you put the right pressure in the right department, he's going to take the easy way out. And there's no principle that governs. If you were Apple and say, our customers' information is secure, right? We don't even have access to that information. And the feds come up to Apple and say, hey, we want a backdoor on your phone. If there's a problem with the terrorists, we want to be able to get into their phone. The Apple could have said, nope, we like our customers saying, fuck you. You're going to have to find a different way, right? Mm-hmm. Did they do that when pressure was put on? When it was like, okay, Apple, there's a guy with a bomb and he's got a bunch of kids in an orphanage. The bomb's going to blow up. We need to get in his phone to see if we can rescue those kids. Now, is Apple going to say, fuck you, find your own way? Or are they going to break their principles because there's some merit in wanting to save the kids? The gray areas are where you can construct the orphanage and the kids dying in a million different ways to be able to manipulate the unprincipled people. You can't expect the principled to not break their principle when it's really meaningful. Like, would you put high esteem to Apple killing the children? Because that would be the headline. Apple kills an orphanage full of children.
Apple doesn't care about kids.
Exactly.
Apple lets children die.
Would you put on a higher pedestal that Apple stuck to its principles and protected its customers' data, or Apple let children die, or Apple save children? Which one would be a higher virtue?
Apple save children.
Right. So that's where we're at. And that's why the pressure could be put on Zuckerberg right now to go in the opposite direction if there was given enough justification that felt like it was a noble cause.
Didn't he say too something like the users were wanting something, so he tried to give it, and then they wanted this, so he tried to go that realm? I feel like he even sort of made it sound like we were just trying different things based on what the feedback was from the people using Facebook.
Well, I'm sure it was. He was, when you report things, like if you mass report some kind of information, it gets pulled off. So people were pissed that, you and I having a discussion and I don't like you and I can get 5 reports on your post, it goes away. You're like, what the fuck? Like, why do the people have such a strong, will in this process? What about the bad actors who are like, here's some truthful stuff, let's mass report it, and it just disappears for all eternity, or accounts get banned or whatever? When you go down that road, smart people will do what we did, cost benefit, right? What are the pros of doing this, and how is it going to be manipulated? We're like, okay, we're going to let people mass report, but what if they take advantage of that and they report things that should be there? If they didn't see that coming, they have no business to be running a tech company where people get their information from. They should be able to work down through the pros and cons.
Yeah, because I think he had said something about we're making it so that innocent people don't get their content messed with.
But if you give that tool, you don't think it's going to be abused from go? And that's why, like, more of the libertarian stance on it, where you just have to tell all the people, when you go to X, you're going to see shit that isn't true by people who want you to believe a certain way. The tools we're going to give you is the ability to respond to those things. And if somebody says something untrue, then it's up to everybody to jump on it and say what is true. And then you let people freaking decide. And that is, like I said, what if people decide wrong? Who cares? They got access to the information and it's on them.
Yeah, because how is it any different than any other form of advertising? You see a commercial on TV for this product that says it's amazing and it does all these wonderful things, and you buy it and it's crap and it doesn't work right. It doesn't do all these things it says. I didn't read the fine print that said, this is enlarged to show texture or whatever they usually write on there. So no more advertising, no more commercials, no more whatever. Like, it's almost sad that people don't already know, and they have to be told, by the way, you're going to see things on the internet that aren't true. And let's work out how you're going to handle that.
And they're in an environment where everything is not true. The president, Congress, they all tell things they want you to believe. They're doing the same kind of marketing that the infomercial is doing. They want you to do a thing, and they're willing to tell you things that are halfway true or whatever to get you to do something. So if you hold us accountable in our speech to one another, you have to hold them accountable in the same way. How about this? Let's ban someone from Congress if they say something that's untrue. Ready to do that, bitches? Come on.
Yeah. I was another interview I saw was Joe Rogan and Mel Gibson, and they got on the subject of Fauci, and they were like, how is that man still have his freedom? How is he not in any trouble? And I never realized that it goes back to even before COVID. Like apparently he had some involvement with the AIDS epidemic as well.
He was in the 80s, the AIDS epidemiology. Yeah, absolutely.
And there was like medications that were killing people with that or something. I don't know. But.
Well, again, I would dig into that. And I think during that period of time, it was probably every bit as corrupt as it is right now. But when you're looking at 30 years ago or 40 years ago, there's going to be a lot of, it's almost like when you read a history book about a certain thing, whoever wrote the book took their angle on it.
Yeah.
And so this is sort of like the pendulum swing back. Like we were oblivious to there were anything that was going on with the AIDS epidemic. You remember from when you were a kid, how that was presented, how the news talked about it, how politicians talked about it. It never was that there were some people behind the scenes that were making, AIDS more available in certain communities, and the drugs that countered it wasn't as good, and they were toying and tinkering. Never heard any of that kind of stuff. So this revision needs to be balanced out as well. So I give it about 25% credibility. There's probably oversimplified and over magnified portions of it because now we're gunning for Fauci. And so the other people now have their chance to be able to market you into feeling a certain way about Fauci. And I think that's equally as unfair. The part about, and I almost don't disagree with oppressive sort of like suspensions and, bannings, as long as they're uniform, right? Mm-hmm. But when a platform takes an angle where they let certain things pass through and other things seem to be immune from that, that's when you get the thing that Facebook did really wrong. And I really, if you're going to hold Zuckerberg accountable for anything, it's going to be that he was way more lenient with one side than he was with the other.
Sort of like, what do you think about this whole concept of canceling when someone gets canceled? And it's not even just online. I mean, I've seen celebrities like, what's her name? Kathy Griffin. Yeah. Yeah. When she got canceled and she said she couldn't get a job. The offer stopped. Nobody wanted to hire her for anything. She wasn't anywhere for a long time because of something she did.
Yeah.
Do you think certain people get canceled, but it's a different standard? Like it's not uniform?
If you can live with the principle upward and downward, then sure. But I always picture it like you have the villagers and they grab their torches and pitchforks, and they burn the place down because they think they know what's going on, and they all get together and they are rogue. They're not logical, right? And destruction happens regardless of what the story is. So in a civilized society, you put down the pitchforks and torches, and you use your intellect to come to an understanding and an agreement. So if we want to be primitive, then let's do the cancel thing. Like as a consumer, if I decide that I don't like some restaurant and I decide personally to just not spend my money there, then they have to work hard to win me back over. And that's the equal exchange. I can go and say, hey, I'm not going to eat here anymore because, your food was whatever. Mm-hmm. And then they have the choice then to say, oh, we're going to fix that and we want to give you back. And it puts responsibility on them to earning my patronage. But if I'm like, I hate this restaurant, I want all my friends to hate this restaurant, and I want us all across the board to penalize this restaurant, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have a lot of people who do it because I said so, but they don't really feel that way. And there's no way for that restaurant to make it up to the people that canceled them because of me. Because what are they winning over? They have to make me happy, so then the rest of those people will whatever. So the band of the torch and pitchforks people are very dangerous. So if Kathy Griffin did something and she lost part of her audience, excuse me, but if the masses have the ability to cancel someone, it's just a matter of time before they hit you. And it's not going to feel effing good when a lot of the people who cancel you have the power to do it, and they don't even know why they're doing it.
Yeah. It's so ridiculous. It's just like, oh, well, I got offended, cancel. And everyone's like, oh, we're canceling them. Oh, okay.
You ever participate in any kind of boycott or canceling?
I don't think I have. No. There's been a bunch around me where I considered it until I then looked closely into it and was like, yeah, I don't care about that. One example is years and years ago, I don't know if you remember, people were pushing to boycott Chick-fil-A. And it was basically centered around they had religious views on something, and it got started that they're against gay people. And so if they're not going to support gay people, we're not going to support them, and nobody should buy Chick-fil-A. And part of me, my gut reaction was like, okay, well, I don't have anything against gay people, and I don't really want to judge them, but I like Chick-fil-A. I don't want to give up Chick-fil-A because I feel like they're allowed to have their own opinion. They can have an opinion. You don't have to eat there if you don't like something they said. Why do I have to not like to eat there? And then the more I dug into it, the more I saw, when Pulse nightclub was shot up, there was a shooter at a gay nightclub called Pulse in, I don't know, Florida or wherever it was. They were holding blood drives for victims, and Chick-fil-A handed out free food to all people in line at that blood drive to support them. And people could look at that and be like, oh, did they do that just to get back in the good graces? Or did they do that because that's who they are, but they were painted something else? And it just came down to like, I don't know. Two people have their own opinions about something, so I'm not boycotting anything. So I never did. I kind of just do that with everything. If someone's like, I don't like this because they did this. Well, let me look at it. Let me see where they were coming from. Let me see why that was said, if it was even said. And most of the time it comes down to it's just not a very strong case to boycott. Have you boycotted?
Again, my relationship is when somebody gives me a product and then I'm suspicious of their motives and I don't want to fund whatever their motives are. I give them the chance to earn me back by an explanation. I don't go the group thing where I try to get more people on board, because people are motivated by two things: money and power, right? And a lot of people take the sort of like the iteration of power with groupthink, meaning that I can control you if I can get enough people to leverage you enough. And I think there's an evil in that. And that's why I don't like the pitchforks and torches people. But you see that even in activist roles. There's some activism that I actually agree with, but I don't agree with the expression of that activism because it uses everything I despise over forcing other people. If I want you to come over on my side, two choices. Either I inspire you to come to my side or I force you, right? I create an authority over you. And a lot of the methods that people use are the worst methods that can be used against human beings. If I can threaten your livelihood and make you do something, that's a pretty powerful thing. But it's all about the force of, taking your choice away to decide because I'm worried that you're going to come to the wrong conclusion. So if we're like, okay, let's all decide. Let's all decide whether or not women should go in the military. You're going to have people who say women could do it, and they're activists on this side. And you're going to have men and infantrymen who agree on this side, right? Giving all of the information. What happens if a majority of people vote for the way that you don't like, right? Then I've got to take some kind of method that, in spite that all the people who chose wrong, that I still have to inflict my decision, what I think is right, on you, and I have to paint you as evil to be able to pull it off. So if I can make you into a racist homophobe, right? I can break you and nobody will feel bad for you at all. And then I own you. That's the power and control I have over the masses. And that's why democracy was such an evil thing over the course of history, because it just was mob rule. Like if you can get enough people to wield power over another person, you can own them. Rather than negotiating between another person. If you and I disagreed, we'd sit here and talk it through until we can have some concessions in the middle and come closer. You buy me away a little bit over, I buy you a way over. But if I held a gun to you and said, see it my way, then I did not inspire you, right?
Yeah.
I controlled you and I forced you to do what you were unwilling to do. And I think that's the laziness in our culture, is that when we disagree with someone, we think that we have to force them rather than inspire them to come to our side.
Yeah. And we're a bunch of right fighters. We don't want to be influenced to look at something a different way or think about it a different way. If I am up in arms and I'm offended or I'm upset about something, or I have a strong feeling about someone, and somebody comes to me and says, look, I think you've got this guy all wrong. I think you're looking at this. Here's some information I have that shows that maybe your information's a little skewed. what do? Do they say, oh, well, let me look at that. Let me consider this. No, they're like, well, that's bull crap. And you just don't even know.
All right. So here's a practical question for next week. Because now Democrats and liberals have the ability on day one of the new Trump presidency to just say the election's over. I have some thoughts and some theories and what I think this guy's going to do wrong. And I'm going to be aware of it and observe it. Okay. But I'm going to give him a chance from day one to do the right thing for America. Right. And when something comes into the territory of something I disagree with, I'm going to say the truthful thing. Right. So that's option one, is let's give it a chance and support the things that I can support and call judgment on things that I don't. Or you have number two is I lost. I'm pissed off about it. And I don't care if it's true or not. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that this guy's the embarrassment that I know he is. And if I can wield all of my power to embarrass this guy, I'm going to freaking do it. Which of those two things do you think are going to happen?
The second one.
The second one for sure.
For sure. For sure. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. When you are in that position, regardless of your party, you don't have a fair shake. Someone is going to try to make it so that you look a certain way if they're not the one who won.
So if that narrative has already been written and you already know going into what everybody's going to say, aren't you then taking away future compromises? If you and I know you're not going to be fair in the future and can be objective about anything. And if you could get beyond that, then we can get some stuff done where we can do some compromise. But if I know you're my enemy and you're going to try to cancel me even before I've done anything, I'm not going to work with you at all. I'm going to do my best to work around you because I know all you're going to do is try to destroy me and you're a danger. Does that not hurt whatever the democracy in air quotes is capable of doing to support the people? They would not be doing justice, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny. You keep hearing people always want to throw this out there. Like, we need somebody that'll reach across the aisle and work together. We need someone that won't cause division, that they'll work with other people. When I'm seeing more and more that doesn't exist because we won't let it. Because 100%. If somebody goes in with that mindset that I will reach across the aisle, I will listen to your ideas, I will work with you, there's always the other side that's like, look, no, he's not. No, he won't. No, he's not. He's doing this. He's it. You'll never get that because there's too many people that will benefit from making it so that you can't.
Yeah, a good example, and this is not I'm using as an example because we're about to have a polarizing figure be put in that circumstance. But the same thing happened. Like I loved Obama the first time around, and the friends that I had and the people around me, I talked to them and said, you know, this guy, he's got everything going for him. He's very popular. He can get some things done. So I'm going to support him in all the things that I can support him on. I got thrashed, right? Because the Republicans were not open to supporting a guy that they just lost to. And I was like, fuck you guys too. Like my party, there is no party that has Joe's name on it because they all do the same dumb shit. They're in it's a team sport. And if you can get something done, I'm going to sabotage the thing that you can get done for the sake of being able to get another 4 years to have the opposite happen from the other, and nothing gets done. It's so stupid.
Yeah. Oh, and you see that all the time when you have an outgoing vice president running for president, and now the person who was just on your team is now your opponent, and now all of a sudden you feel well, he couldn't do this and they couldn't do that and they're not good for this position. Stupid. It's like, that's funny. For 4 years you thought they were. When they were your running mate, you were great. But now that they're competition, now they're a terrible person. Why? Because that's how you need to paint that. And so then, you can't trust any of them or any of the sources of information. I liked Obama too. I wanted to go have a drink with him.
Yeah,
sometime. He was fun.
The dude had it together. He really did. I thought he was super smart. Like, that guy was so connected and so smart. If everybody would have said, all right, put politics away, let's get some shit done. Yeah. Because he didn't even really do anything that would offend either side. He was such a pragmatist. Right. Yeah. He might have hated some of the things that he supported when he was in Chicago or his previous ones. But on day one as president, he did a fairly good job. I could say the same thing about Bill Clinton. I was on board with Bill Clinton because I'm America first, and I want whoever's there to get the most amount of things done that help nonpartisan politics.
Yep.
Just individuals and freedom and whatever.
And he was so, Obama, I feel like, was so likable. I used to tell people, regardless of what you think he did or what his policies were, you got to admit he was likable. You know, I think we are now seeing more and more candidates that they won't have that. They being the powers that be that push campaigns and things. You almost can't have a likable person. I think RFK Jr. is very likable. And as soon as that comes to surface, oh, it's because he's crazy. It's because he's a liar. It's because he's not who you think he is. It's all this other stuff. Like, you can't even now, they won't even let that happen, I don't think.
So yesterday at that hearing for that guy from, I can't pronounce his name, but Department of Defense, one of the questions, and they were kind of interesting, but one of the questions was, there were reports that at social events, you drank alcohol, right? And if you because the Department of Defense is a 24/7 job, will you commit to us right now that you will not drink alcohol? That was an actual question. And it was two-pronged. Number one, everybody in that place, maybe a few exceptions, drink alcohol, right? So how that could be the disqualifying factor for the Department of Defense, he could have said, every director in the history has probably consumed alcohol when they were in the Department of Defense. That's number one.
Yeah.
Second part is, will you commit to not drinking at all? That is almost like the setup. So somewhere in the future, they can get a snapshot of him drinking after he said, get him to say, no, I'm
ever again.
Get him to say that he won't, or won't stop drinking. And then you can be like, oh, freaking lunch. Right.
Yeah.
Or get him to say that he won't, and then get the snapshot of him. Now he's a liar. So that like chess match that went on there. Right.
Yeah. If he's like, yeah, I think I could probably give it up. Oh, you think? Why? Do you have a problem with alcohol? And then it's Department of Defense has an alcohol problem. He thinks he can stop, but he doesn't know. Like, oh,
you
yeah.
can see the headlines.
Yep.
And digging into that, it would verbatim be truthful.
Yes.
But they wanted you to feel a certain way about that.
And I see that in every interview with a politician. You literally see the journalist just like leaning in and saying, are you saying that you would yada, yada, yada? And I'll watch Trump be like, what I'm saying is we're looking into it. So you will do that. I'm saying we're having a meeting about it. So you want to do this. And you know, like, she's just waiting for that headline. I just want you to say yes. And then off to press it goes. Headline, will do this, wants this. And it's like, you're not even letting him not say anything. He's like, we're having meetings about it. We're discussing it, you know, and they just want that. They don't care about getting actual information.
Yes, they're looking to
headlines.
Get you. They're going to get you. And I wouldn't mind it so much, because I think even like journalists should play really hard at people to box them in, keep pressure on them and whatever. But being in the liberal media that they are, will treat one politician and ask them those hard questions. Jim Acosta was real good about like really hammering the Trump administration the last time. And then I watched Jim Acosta talk to the press secretary of the next, and they're like, what kind of ice cream does Biden like? And then they totally free of those gotcha questions and treated them completely different. Then the headlines, Biden loves chocolate ice cream. And us were like, come on, you painted a gray area thing in this direction, and you didn't even create a gray area of suspicion. You talked about dogs and ice cream and his workout routine and riding his bicycle. That's suspect.
And I feel that happened a lot with Trump and Kamala. I mean, there were all these hard questions and all these attempted gotcha moments when they were talking to Trump or Vance. And then with Kamala, I swear to you, I could tell you what the first 5 minutes of her speech was word for word. It was always going to go back when I was a little girl and I was raised by so-and-so and we would do this. And I'm like, why are we hearing this story again? Why are we hearing? We've already heard this. Just answer the question. And then another hard question over here. And what do you mean by that? And then over here, you can tell it's going to be, oh, wouldn't it, but we just want to come together and work together and not be divided. And I'm like, if people can't see the difference here, we are screwed. This isn't being biased. This isn't me putting, my beliefs in it or who I feel like I want to win. I am just like, you cannot look at these and say, this is equal treatment with these interviews. It was so blatantly obvious, but people don't want to be wrong. They can't be wrong. That's not true. She had a lot of good information to say. If you honestly believe that, then okay.
All right, so let's change it into a steak place, right? So you go to a steak place and you're like, I'm going to this place because I want to get steak. And you order steak, you're ready to eat steak, and they deliver everything except for steak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking around and you're like, man, like I just wanted freaking steak. And I'm not real happy that I got delivered everything but steak. But then you look over, the same person in the boat over there that's just overjoyed about the steak that they just ate. You're like, you just didn't eat steak either. You're eating blah, but they're delusional that they just got fed some kind of new information. But everybody's like in this weird Twilight Zone bubble. Everybody wants to be informed about stuff and doesn't get served what they actually did. We're like, oh, those politicians, let's give them more power so they can do that same, I was a kid and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And all those like, oh.
But these potatoes were so good. Yeah, but you came for steak. But I love these potatoes.
Yeah, you just want want everybody to just get a higher standard, but they're so bought into the dogma of politics that they're given a shit sandwich and they're just raving about how good the steak was. Fine, you're a great orator and you tell a great story. Give them credit for what they did well, but don't like throw it down to. I wish every paper would be like, another debate, nothing new came out of it because politics is stupid. That would be the headline. I'd be like, I'm subscribing to this newspaper. I will buy the most expensive version of it because they told me actual information.
After last night's debate, no new information.
Two really dumb people that told the same freaking stories that we've heard 1,000 times. Let's not do that ever again because that was expensive and stupid.
Yep, I agree. It's going to be interesting. I am excited. I'm equally excited to see what happens and almost frustrated that no matter what happens, it will be turned around and spun, by other people. And it's just, what are you going to do?
Yeah. I want everybody kind of like lower their expectations on both sides. And honestly, enough is created that insulate us from big changes anyway. So every big change you think is going to happen, it's probably not. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be more politics with more money being spent and more, power being garnered by people that are not you. Mm-hmm. So don't look at it as some kind of Super Bowl because you're going to be disappointed.
What was your first gut internal reaction when you saw a headline saying Trump wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America?
You get so much political capital when you win an election. Spend it wisely. Don't do stupid shit. And I feel like that is the stupidest expenditure of political capital imaginable. Whether downside is if it doesn't happen, now you've got a blemish that you couldn't pull off renaming the Gulf of Mexico. And if you you get no real victory in that. Like the only thing you get is when people have to say the thing that you changed and it pisses them off. That's really all you get out of it. So it was very dumb.
That my gut reaction was, that's dumb. Followed immediately by, I don't care. And I say that because the amount of people I saw up in arms about it. And I wanted to say, did you for 2 seconds give a shit about the Gulf of Mexico before the man you don't like brought it up? Did you at all care?
That's it. That's exactly right.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.